hair care brand Anomaly exclusively on Nykaa also promises to expand to other verticals like skincare and makeup. Well, let's start with what was a volatile session on the Lal Street. The Sensex and the Nifty ending with minor gains after some pretty wild swings. Metals and energy stocks rallied today, but pharma stocks were subdued. For the week, though, both the indices have lost 1%, and with this, a 5-week winning streak has come to an end. So that was the equity market action. But Indian benchmark bond yields fell by 6 to 7 basis points on the back of a Financial Times report that said that JP Morgan is sounding investors to check if they want Indian bonds in their widely tracked emerging market bond index. Lata joins us now with more. Lata, the speculation has been rife for months now. What are you picking up?
Yes, that's the big chatter in the bond markets today. Bond yields fell because of this, the report, a Financial Times story that everyone is WhatsApping to one another. The report says that JP Morgan, the bank, has been sounding out investors in its, which follow its bond fund as to whether Indian bonds should be included in their index. FT has only quoted sources. They have not named anybody, but the news was enough to drive down bond yields. Now, what Financial Times story says is that the JPM management bank is asking for Indian bonds, asking investors whether the Indian bond should be included in their JBI EM Global Diversified Index. That index includes all the local currency, like the rupee-denominated bonds. The consultations apparently opened in summer. Now, by summer, I would assume they mean June. And they consulted fund managers who account for 85% of all the assets which, track the JPM indexes. And what FT says is that they started this consultation because there was a growing chorus of investors who wanted Indian bonds included in the index. The calculation is something which Goldman Sachs has done and others have done, that if India gets included, $30 billion of funds can flow into Indian bonds. And just as a background, India has designated some bonds as FAR bonds, that is fully accessible route. Otherwise, foreign funds can buy only about 5% of outstanding Indian bonds. But of that, some bonds, 5-year, 10-year, 7-year, etc., have been designated by the Indian government as fully accessible, which is what foreign investors want. They want liquidity. And only if all these FAR bonds are included in the JBI index, India's weightage will be 10% of that index. And any passive fund which follows that index will have to invest in Indian bonds as well. Now, JP Morgan actually meets in October to discuss the proposal, and the next month itself they can announce the proposal. So it can come as early as that. The FT report says that JPM and Indian government did not respond to the story.
Lata, many thanks for joining us. Now, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has welcomed the clarification that's coming from the Reserve Bank of India over bank privatization, saying it has ended uncalled for apprehensions. The RBI had clarified that it is not against privatization and that a report calling for gradual disinvestment of state-run banks was the view of the researchers who authored that report and not the view of the central bank.
Well, it's certainly a policy matter on which the government will take a call. And I was glad that the RBI governor had the RBI come up with a clarificatory statement. Without that statement, there were a lot of apprehensions, there were a lot of questions, which I think was uncalled for.
Well, that is the Finance Minister saying they're happy with the clarification that's come in from the Reserve Bank on bank privatization. A historic day for the Indian judiciary. The Supreme Court conducted live streaming of Chief Justice N.V. Ramana's last day in courtroom. This was the first time ever that the court's proceedings were shown to the public live on camera. But do remember, it was in September of 2018 that a 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court had allowed live streaming of the hearings in the top court, except in sensitive matters. However, the live streaming was not adopted in practice till today. Now, there were emotional scenes in court with senior lawyer Dushyant Dave breaking down as he bid an emotional farewell to Justice Ramana.
Your Lordships have been a citizen's judge. Lord, I speak on behalf of vast multitude of citizens of this country. You stood up for them. You upheld their rights. You upheld the Constitution. When you took over, I wrote that day an article. I was skeptical. I was skeptical after what the court had gone through. But I must say, your Lordship excelled our expectations. You lived beyond anybody's expectations. You did what is really expected to be done by this. It was amazing to see. That real checks and balance, which is required to be kept between judiciary, executive, and the parliament, you did it. And you did it with a smile. Your Lordships really blessed this country with amazing constitutional morality, amazing constitutional ethos, and it will always be remembered for a long time.
I am not the last or the first one to contribute for development of the institution. Several great people have contributed immensely to advance the cause of justice. People may come and go, but the institution remains forever. Of course, each one of us have to make our own contribution. I have done my bit to the best of my ability. The war may have had many long pending issues. I have tried to address them to the extent possible, be it additional space of office or chambers or any other reasonable demands. I have directed the registry to attend to the same on priority, and I believe the results are satisfactory. I thank all my colleagues and all the members of the bar for their active support and cooperation. I will certainly miss you all.
Well, that is Justice Ramana saying farewell today. That was his final speech in the Supreme Court. Ashmit joins us now with what transpired today. Ashmit, how will members of the bar and the bench remember Justice Ramana's tenure?
Well, Justice Ramana, his tenure has been quite an interesting one. Now, Justice N.V. Ramana was India's 48th Chief Justice, took charge in April of 2021 and will retire today. But will his tenure that stretched across 16 months, one would struggle to find noteworthy judgments that clarified on matters of constitutional law. However, what does come to mind are speeches that he gave on various public platforms. In one such speech, he reflected on the trust deficit in the judiciary by saying, and I quote, "In my humble view, in the absence of judicial review, people's faith in our constitution would have diminished," unquote. In another such speech that he gave at Nalsa, he reflected on the need for police reform, noting that threat to human rights is at its highest in police stations. While his speeches may have been thought-provoking, they did little to effect any significant change. What many expected was for him to hear and decide very long-pending matters affecting politics, civil rights and constitutional law. Now, Justice N.V. Ramana made little progress here. Key cases such as the challenges to abrogation of Article 370, plea questioning electoral bonds, petitions against the constitutionality of Citizen Amendment Act have not been heard for over a year now. Moreover, despite dozens of cases and public criticism, CJI Ramana made no move to hear the pleas challenging the UAPA. In fact, the plea against the hijab ban, which was filed in March, has not been heard even once. So what has been the impact of his tenure? Well, he was responsible for constituting an expert panel on the Pegasus case while directing that the centre cannot use the bogey of national security to silence judicial inquiry. But it seems to have had little effect, with the technical committee also reporting that the centre has refused to clarify on the use of Pegasus, again citing national security. CJI Ramana can also claim credit for staying the infamous sedition provisions. He also moved swiftly to cancel the bail of Union Minister Ajay Mishra's son Ashish Mishra in the Lakhimpur Kheri case. The last few days were quite busy for him. He issued notice on plea against the remission of sentence of 11 rapists in the Bilkis Bano case. He also red flagged Supreme Court's own PMLA judgment, pointing out some aspects that need to be reviewed. He also launched a debate on electoral freebies, but has left it open for the apex court to decide later. Meanwhile, the Shiv Sena and Delhi Centre disputes have been referred to larger benches. On the administrative side, to his credit, is the filling of as many as 224 vacancies in various high courts. He's also responsible for the elevation of Justice B.V. Nagaratna, who's likely to become India's first female Chief Justice, and that's likely to happen in 2027.
Well, Ashmit Kumar, many thanks for joining us in comprehensively wrapping up the tenure of the Chief Justice of India, N.V. Ramana, who retires today. The Supreme Court has also passed some significant orders on the last day of the Chief Justice. The case pertaining to the so-called freebies matter has been referred to a 3-judge bench. The court has said that this issue requires extensive hearing and has ordered for the constitution of an expert body to submit recommendations. The Apex Court also said that all welfare schemes cannot be equated to be freebies and added that the fiscal impact of distributing freebies must also be considered. Some more relief for iron ore miners in Karnataka. The Supreme Court has increased the annual cap on iron ore production in 3 districts from 28 million metric tons to 35 million metric tons. The districts are Ballari, Chitradurga and Tumakuru. The Supreme Court has ruled that the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code will take precedence over the Customs Act. The Apex Court has ruled that the Customs Authority can only determine the quantum of duties and levies but cannot initiate recovery proceedings. The court added that once moratorium under IBC is declared, custom authorities have only limited jurisdiction. The big story from Deal Street, SR Group has decided to sell its infrastructure assets to ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel for $2.4 billion. What does the deal entail and what does it mean for the large conglomerates SR and ArcelorMittal? Nisha joins us now to take us through the details. Nisha.
It's a fairly significant transaction, a large deal in which SR Group sells assets worth $2.4 billion to ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel, which includes 3 port assets as well as 2 power units and some ancillaries. Now remember that the 3 port assets are in 3 different states, in Gujarat, in Hazira, as well as in Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh, and in Odisha, Paradeep. And Hazira one in particular is extremely important because ArcelorMittal had bought SR Steel from the group under the IBC route because of the debt payment that was required by SR Group. And this particular transaction really culminates the SR Steel acquisition finally, because some of these units that have been now finally sold by SR Group to the ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel unit are really captive in nature and essential, critical to the asset that was bought in terms of SR Steel. So very important deal here between the 2 companies. It also culminates the entire transaction and the debt repayment by SR Group, because of which they had to sell SR Steel as well as SR Oil. And now one more aspect is that a 50-50 joint venture will be done between SR Group and ArcelorMittal to really set up an LNG terminal at the Hazira port. Apart from that, what SR Group does with the money, apart from debt repayment, needs to be watched out very carefully. Now flushed with money, what are the new businesses that they're going to set up as an industrial hubs?
Nisha, many thanks. News from the auto sector. The government has stopped the FAME scheme and PLI payouts for auto companies flouting domestic value addition criteria, saying that companies gave Indian-made products for certification, but those that were sold in the market were actually not made in India. This is CNBC-TV18 exclusive.
If somebody has taken X money from the government exchequer, which was not his due, so is it not the government duty to recover it? It's our duty to recover. So we are recovering that. In the sense, that amount, if they have taken X money, that X money from the future payments will be stopped. But not more than X, only X. We are very clear about it. So the moment the product is made in India, nobody will ask questions. But if they have said made in India, but it's not made in India, and if they've taken a benefit for that, that thing will not be paid.
And that's important, coming in from the Heavy Industries Secretary. The actress and entrepreneur Priyanka Chopra Jonas has partnered with beauty e-commerce platform Nykaa to launch her hair care brand Anomaly in India. In an exclusive interview with CNBC-TV18, she talks about her latest venture and how she addresses the gap in the hair care market, and also talks about expansion plans going forward.
Well, the one thing I love about Nykaa is not just the fact that they're leaders in beauty and accessibility around the country, but they also have an amazing female founder. And I love that story. I love the fact that they have grown the way they have. They have taken beauty to literally people's hands around the country, and they're, the best to be able to partner with. Expansion. That's the idea, whether that is in the verticals that we are creating, in terms of products, in terms of the countries that we want to travel to. We're back in the lab right now. I just tested out a few products a couple of days ago, so I'm very, very excited about what will come through.
Well, that's Priyanka Chopra. Jonas, we'll take a break, but coming up, less than 48 hours to go for the demolition of the Supertech Twin Towers in Noida. 3,500 kgs of explosives will be used to bring down buildings in just 9 seconds. That and more when we return. Investors across the world had their eyes trained on Jackson Hole in Wyoming for the annual symposium of central bankers. U.S. Fed Chief Jerome Powell making his much-anticipated speech. Take a look.
Restoring price stability will take some time and requires using our tools forcefully to bring demand and supply into better balance. Reducing inflation is likely to require a sustained period of below-trend growth. Restoring price stability will likely require maintaining a restrictive policy stance for some time. The historical record cautions strongly against prematurely loosening policy. The more inflation rose, the more people came to expect it to remain high, and they built that belief into wage and price decisions. As former Chairman Paul Volcker put it at the height of the Great Inflation in 1979, inflation feeds in part on itself, so part of the job of returning to a more stable and more productive economy must be to break the grip of inflationary expectations. We are taking forceful and rapid steps to moderate demand so that it comes into better alignment with supply and to keep inflation expectations anchored. We will keep at it until we're confident the job is done.
Well, the big story back home. Last year, the Supreme Court ordered the demolition of builder Supertech's Twin Towers in Noida. The order came after the court found grave violation of building norms and complicity between the Noida Authority and Supertech. This has led to a mammoth demolition exercise, which began months ago and will culminate on the 28th of August. Residents in the area have been asked to evacuate in preparation. And while there are major concerns about the impact of this demolition on buildings in the vicinity, authorities are clear that the demolition will go ahead and that things are in place and in order. Abhimanyu Sharma reports.
These are the two towers in question, the 168-meter tall, 32-story Apex Tower and the 29-story CN Tower. A staged implosion and gravity will ensure that both these towers will be reduced to rubble in a matter of a few seconds. Explosives weighing up to 3,500 kilograms have been laid and connected floor to floor. A team of certified blasters, police officials and company officials will be present near the site at the time of the demolition. Spread over an area of 7.5 lakh square feet, the demolition is expected to generate 35,000 cubic meters of debris. Though all structural safety precautions have been taken by authorities, residents in nearby housing societies are worried about the impact of this demolition on their apartments. Those living around these twin towers have been asked to evacuate temporarily.
Residents are fearful and I do endorse their views, but I think they have taken proper care so that nothing happens. But for emergencies they have also made arrangement, and repair has been made in 51 pillars of the existing building which were weak. Administration has ordered that every resident has to evacuate the society right at 7 a.m. They have been saying that we can come back by evening.
The 1,400 families residing in the vicinity will be able to return to their homes by evening once permitted by officials, while the company carrying out the demolition and the state government have assured that nearby buildings will not be damaged and that the debris will be cleared within 3 months. The residents have their concerns.
There might be a scenario where there are some kind of cracks, or maybe with the basements, the parking, and like all the glass mirrors, whether they're going to break. So it's a long time, 90 days, and there will be a lot of dust all the time, and people especially who are having asthmatic patients, they are going to face a lot of trouble.
Water sprinklers and mechanized sweepers will be deployed to clear the dust and minimize air pollution. Residential buildings around the twin towers will also be covered with protective sheets. The demolition is being carried out by Mumbai-based firm Edifice Engineering and South Africa-based Jet Demolition.
It's not a free fall. We call it as an implosion, waterfall implosion, because the time is so short. We'll not be able to see. It will put it in a slow motion, you will be able to see the waterfall. It will come like this. The building will come on the ground like this, basically to minimize the vibrations on ground. Confident that vibrations are not going to damage any structures surrounding this property. Total time will be 9 seconds for the explosives to ignite and around 5 to 6 seconds for the building to come down.
Jet Demolition's director has said that the demolition of the buildings will be difficult to carry out, not because of their size, but because of the presence of much smaller buildings in the vicinity and a densely populated neighborhood. The Noida-Greater Noida Expressway will be closed for 30 minutes on the day of the demolition. Elaborate traffic diversion arrangements